All right, guys, welcome to UFC Fight Night Sandhagen versus Song Moneyline MMA edition. This fight's coming to you guys on September 17th with the prelims starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. These fights are occurring at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. And as we speak, the main event is just about the only fight on this card that is secured, at least before the weigh-ins, of course, with Sandhagen versus Yadong Song, a bantamweight bout, a big increase in competition for Song. And then to follow that up, we've supposed to have a featherweight bout between Giga Chikadze and Sadiq Youssef. Chikadze has dropped out. I believe that fight is they're looking for a replacement right now for Sadiq. It's getting pretty last minute, so I doubt they're going to find one at this point. So we'll see if that happens. So your current co-main event, Chidi Nioquani against RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez, a middleweight bout. And following them up will be Andre Fili fighting Bill Algeo, a featherweight bout. And then strictly going off the UFC's website here, the middleweight bout to follow that will be Joe Pyfer and Alan Amadovsky. And to open the main card, at least to what the UFC has right now, Tanner Boser, the heavyweights, Rodrigo Nascimento Ferreira. So this will be an interesting card, and Jose is going to start with the first fight of the night.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And yeah, so the first fight of the night is obviously the main event that we're going to talk about right now, and it's Corey Sandhagen versus Yadong Kung Fu Monkey Song. And this fight is exciting. Right now, Corey Sandhagen is the betting favorite at minus 215, while Yadong Song is the betting underdog at plus 164. Even though Corey Sandhagen is the betting favorite, he has lost his last two fights to TJ Dillashaw and Peter Yan. And of course, those are huge names. You know, it's no easy test for Corey Sandhagen. I mean, you got both the former champs Peter Yan and TJ Dillashaw. And right now, and then even before that, he also fought former champ Frankie Edgar, had a crazy flying knockout. And on the other hand, right now, the betting underdog, Yadong Song, he's coming off a 3-fight win streak. And his most recent win comes over Marlon Morales that happened earlier at UFC Fight Night 203 earlier this year in March. He beat Marlon Morales via KO in the first round. And that's actually an impressive win, though. You know, Marlon Morales has not had the best of luck at the tail end of his UFC career. He was a legend too. Even coming before the UFC, a lot of people forget. Marlon Morales was an established name already outside of the UFC as well, so he is a legend. There was close times where he almost even won the title, like when he fought Henry Cejudo. Man, he's been shown to do that, but getting a first round KO against him is a big name to have on your resume. So this is going to be a fun matchup, Nick. I'm surprised to see Corey Sandhagen be the betting favorite, even though he has two losses. So I think that shows a lot of respect of what the fans have for him, Nick.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And you did kind of brush up, past the fact that, and I don't mean that like you didn't address it, but I just mean like you kind of did mention a little bit. Corey Sandhagen's losses here, TJ Dillashaw and Pierre Yan, those are some really good fighters to lose to. Obviously, Pierre Yan being the former champion, TJ Dillashaw, those guys are top end fighters. And his only other loss in the UFC is to the current champion, Aljamain Sterling. So Corey Sandhagen is looking to beat Song and then just get revenge pretty much on anyone possible above him in this division. And we'll see, man. I think he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. It's looking like he's just a little bit bigger and taller of a guy. I like his strike output a little bit more. I don't know, man. I think this is going to be a close fight. Song is going to bring it. He's on a 3-fight win streak. They both beat Marlon Moraes in the end of his career here. And honestly, Song beating Chito Vera as well, that's pretty impressive to beat him by decision. I believe that was the fight of the night as well. What a performance. That's probably the best performance he's ever put on in the UFC. His win against Casey Kenny was merely a split decision. So yeah, I mean, he's gotten some good, talented fighters on his resume, but I still feel like Corey Sandhagen's going to bring something unique that Song isn't used to, man. So we'll see. But I think I might be leaning Corey Sandhagen's way on this one.
And yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, Nick. I agree with you. Corey Sandhagen has proven a lot. He's proven to hang with the elite of the elite. But Yadong Song as well, like you mentioned, the big names that he's beaten, he also comes out of an elite camp. As a matter of fact, both these fighters come out of elite camps. Corey Sandhagen just trains with Kamaru Usman and Justin Gaethje, Rose Namajunas. Those are great teammates to have. While Yadong Song comes over from Team Alpha Male and he trains under Uriah Faber. That's TJ Dillishaw's former gym. Chad Mendez has had a long run there. So, and Yadong Song, what he brings to the table is his youth. He's only 24, Nick, and he has an extensive record actually already for his age. He is 19-6. That's pretty impressive for how young he is. And the fact that, like you mentioned, he's been able to beat someone like Chito Vera early on in his career as well is says a lot. So Yadong Song, I think there's a lot of value for him being the underdog here, Nick. He comes and brings a heavy pace. He does throw 4.92 significant strikes per minute, not far off from Corey Sandhagen's 6.42 significant strikes landed per minute. And he does have great wrestling defense as well. Yadong Song, he is a pretty technical fighter, and I think he's only going to get better. He's just 24, Nick. So I don't know. Maybe Corey Sandhagen could be the guy that that really stamps his name in the division.
That's a great point, man. And I forgot. I didn't even realize Song is that young, man. How impressive for him to have the resume he does in the UFC at the age he does, man. That's awesome. But still, that being said, I think this is just more or less Corey Sandhagen's time. He's not old. He's 30 years old. And I think he's just about to start hitting the strides of his career as well. And I think Song will come out and be a massive contender in a couple of years. But for now, I think he's going to have to take the step aside for the guys like Corey Sandhagen. So I'm gonna pick the favorite here, although I can totally agree with you that there is value in that underdog, and I'm not sure I'm betting a dime on Corey Sandhagen straight up to win this fight at all, because minus 215 is a lot more steep than I'm wanting to pay against a guy like Yadong Song right now. So I will pick Corey Sandhagen to win this fight, but we'll discuss more on the bets later on. But yeah, to be honest, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to make any individual bets on this fight.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear what you're saying, Nick. Like looking more into it, I am kind of looking at this underdog in a pretty like inciting way because he actually, I want to say that Corey Sandhagen, because he's the older guy, has more experience, but Yadong Song actually has more experience than Corey Sandhagen. He overall has more fights than him, so that alone also says a lot to me. So I get what you're saying, why you would stay away from this. I do want to lean towards the favorite Corey Sandhagen, just because what he's proven in the UFC. But Yadong Song, he's no joke. He's an up and rising. He's definitely a quick and up and rising star too, especially if he gets this win. But for this one, yeah, I would lean towards Corey Sandhagen just because of his UFC experience, though. Even though Yadong Song has more overall MMA experience, Corey Sandhagen has more UFC experience, and he trains with elite fighters who have been champions. So they both come from great camps, but you can't beat it when you're training with Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas, and Justin Gaethje. And so forth. So because of that, I'm going to go with Corey Sandhagen for this one. I think he's going to be smart enough just to get it by decision win. Both guys like to finish people, but I don't know. I think Corey Sandhagen is going to just draw this one out and get a decision win.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. And as I look here, the more I look to, the more I favor the underdog. In all honesty, I mean Corey Sandhagen definitely has some impressive TKO wins under his belt, but I'm just not seeing. I mean, Frankie Edgar's a pretty good win, I guess, last year, but man, you make a good point, dude. The age at this point, what does that really matter if a guy has more fights? And those fights are against just as good, if not better, of fighters. Shoot, man. Yeah, if anything, I'm betting money on the underdog here, but I'm definitely not betting individually on Sandhagen.
Yeah, man. I just going down Yadong Song's his record. Yeah, he has a lot more UFC fights than I thought. So, um, yeah. I would definitely. I'm going to stay off this one too, but I'm rooting for Corey Sandhagen. But hey, man, honestly, whoever takes this win, this is a tough one for sure. But yeah, that underdog, guys. For you, those of you listening, yeah, Yadong Song wouldn't be a bad bet. I'm personally just want you to know that I'm personally looking at Corey Sandhagen as well, though.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, our next fight coming up here is Chidi Neoquani against RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez at middleweight. Jose, this is going to be interesting. We just watched Neoquani dust up Dusko Todorovic with an elbow in round one earlier this year. Chidi, man, he's coming off of a couple good streaks here. He won his contender series back last year, and he's been able to win a couple more fights. So now he's undefeated in the UFC. And RoboCop is he's a guy that we've been following. This is going to be his third fight this year. So this is a guy we've discussed multiple times on the show before. Back when he lost a split decision against Petrosian, that was one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, that was one of the first cards we actually started covering heavier. But I'd have to look back and see. Regardless, then he came back and beat Julian Marquez, which is pretty big because that's a round one knockout. But man, Jose, I think this is good matchmaking, to be honest. Just like the main event here, I think these guys are really going to duke it out. And no matter who you favor to win this fight, I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, Nick, I agree. This is exciting. Chidi Neokwani, when we talked about him earlier this year, I remember saying, like, this guy's probably going to be a big breakout star in the future, and we'll definitely be seeing him on the main card, higher up on the main card pretty soon. And that's exactly what we're seeing right before our eyes. And both him and Robocop coming off first round finishes is tremendous. It's, I think, just sets up, like, I think this fight, I don't know. I don't think this fight's going to definitely make it to the end of the 3 rounds. I definitely see someone's lights going out in this one for sure. And Chidi Neil Kawani, I'm gonna have to lean towards him as the to get the finish, just because of his extensive experience that he's had prior to the UFC. He's 22-7, and he's only 3 years older than RoboCop. RoboCop is 12-4, and maybe like the last fight, man. I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to kind of backtrack a bit, and maybe earlier for Yudong Song, I may want to go back and bet on that underdog because, yeah, I do like the more experience overall. And right here, Chidi Neo Kawani, yeah, like you said, age is nothing but a number. Chidi Neo Kawani is only 3 years older, and he has a lot more experience. And the experience he has is very reputable in the Bellator, and especially the fights that he's had in Bellator. And he's just flashy and explosive. You don't know what he's going to bring to the table, Nick. So this is going to be a fight that I definitely think will not make it to the end of 3 rounds.
Yeah, man, I love that assertion, and I think you're accurate in that. I mean, Neo Kwani got to fight guys like Andre Fialho, who's now in the UFC, back in Bellator in 2016. I mean, this guy's been seeing some top end talent for years, and to be his age and to see this amount of competition and to continue to bring it, man. Obviously, I mentioned he's 3-0 in the UFC, all three knockouts. He's just one of those guys that you got to see when he's in the ring. You got to see it. And RoboCop, not to take anything away, because I mean, if we're looking at raw numbers, RoboCop lands 6 strikes per minute, 6 significant strikes per minute, and Chidi Neoquani's at 3.76. Now that's not double, but I mean that's getting close. And obviously that does lead to RoboCop maybe absorbing a little bit more at 5.73 compared to Neoquani's 1.45. It's very clear that these guys have a little bit different of a style, but what's fascinating is with Neo Quani's like fast pace, knockout pace, he only absorbs 1.5 significant strikes a minute, which is just crazy. And I think a lot of that is because of the fact that he's only got 3 fights, and that those 2 of those 3 fights ended in the first round. So his opponent really didn't have much of a chance to do anything anyway. So to me, one thing I looked at was, I don't know, can RoboCop bring this to the ground potentially? Because I don't know how else he's going to be able to suppress the ability and the pressure that Neo Kwani will bring. And taking a look, RoboCop's never gotten a submission win in his career, in or outside the UFC. He does get takedowns occasionally when it opens itself up. He got 3 against Dusko, and he got two against Petrosian. So he does take guys down occasionally. He took down Jun Young Park twice as well before knocking him out, but he just does not get submissions. And Neo Kwani also has a really respectable 76% takedown defense. So, man, I do agree that I think I lean the favorite, Neo Kwani, here. Which, speaking of the favorite, that's actually since split off. So this is one of those fights, Jose. This is actually really close. And believe it or not, RoboCop on FanDuel at least is sitting at minus 120 right now. Neo Kwani minus 106, making him the slight underdog, man. That's fascinating.
Yeah, man, that just changed right before my eyes right here. I just had to refresh my page and saw the money line move. Yeah, I mean, Chidi, I think when it comes down to it, I'm looking at it's definitely gonna be come down to the stand up game, and I see Chidi. He has a 5-inch reach advantage over Gregory Rodriguez, and not only that, he overall has two more knockouts on his record than RoboCop has of wins overall. That being said, yeah, we mentioned his experience, his explosiveness, he can be unpredictable. I think this one, is much respect to RoboCop as well. The dude he looks like he just has tree trunk of legs and just looks he definitely looks a lot more bulkier than Chitty, but they both they both have high takedown defense, so I don't know what much action we'll see off the ground. That being said, I'm gonna have to go with the guy that has more experience, and the guy that has the longer reach advantage. Their striking is very comparable. Like you mentioned, RoboCop does have that impressive 6 significant strikes line per minute. If Chidi can withstand and survive that, I think he can get the win and find a finish. So for this one, yeah, you can have me with the betting underdog right now. Then Chidi Niokwani.
Yeah, man, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm definitely favoring the underdog here. I think that's so much value to take for a guy that's going to be a star. I'm not saying he's going to be a champion necessarily, but I think this guy's going to be really good. And he's going to continue to take the pressure to RoboCop, and I'm not sure RoboCop's high significant strikes average is going to play much a factor if he's hitting the tarmac unconscious in round one, like two of the previous opponents have against Neo Kwani. So we'll see, man. But I'm definitely going with who is now the underdog slightly, and I'll be betting a decent amount of individual money on Neo Kwani.
And well, that brings us over to our next fight of the night. We have a featherweight bout between Andre Fili and Bill Algeo. Right now, Andre Fili is the betting favorite at minus 138, while Bill Algeo is the betting underdog at plus 108. Andre Fili is a guy we talked about a bit. He's actually coming off a loss right now to Joe Anderson Brito off UFC on ESPN 35 earlier this year in April. He lost in the first round via TKO, while Bill Algeo is actually coming off a 2-fight winning streak, one by decision and one second round TKO. So this is another one of those. Actually, Andre Fili's really coming off 2 losses. He has a no contest back in June of 2021, but he hasn't actually gotten a win since June of 2020. While the last time that Bill Algeo lost was to Ricardo Ramos back in May of 2021. So it's kind of interesting to see that Andre Fili is actually the betting favorite here, yet he's coming off consecutive losses, while Bill Algeo has 2 consecutive wins, and he's the betting underdog, Nick.
No doubt, man. This is one of those fights I kind of took a look at Bill Algeo ahead of time. I didn't know too much about him. He does have 6 fights in the UFC, and he fought in July, which I couldn't believe because I don't remember. He must have been on the prelims or something for that card. But regardless, I didn't know much about him, so I'm looking him up, and I'm actually getting, I'm seeing some respectful stats and some respectful wins here. He did start 0-2 in the UFC, but he's since come back, and I think his win against Brito is really significant. That's went the full 15 minutes, and he was able to get the unanimous decision, man. I think that's impressive because Brito is obviously a pretty tough opponent that even Andre Fili had difficulty with earlier this year. So I don't know, man. I get Feely. He might have a little bit more of the name value. He's got a lot more experience, especially in the UFC. I mean, his second fight in the UFC back in 2014 was against Max Holloway, got choked out. He got to fight Yair Rodriguez in 2016, got knocked out. Calvin Cater lost by decision. He's fought some big names, and I think that's part of why Feely might be a favorite here. But I don't know, man. I'm not sure which way you're leaning. But before I even saw the odds on this fight, I was like, man, Bill Algeo is probably going to be some good value here because I have a lot of respect for Andre Feely. But just based off what we've seen, I think Algeo is really going to take it to him. I mean, it's crazy to me that this is what is this fight's happening in the featherweight division, man. For these guys to be 5'11", 6 feet tall, they got to be getting real small, man. That's got to be a tough weight cut for both of these guys. But yeah, dude, this will be a fascinating fight.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, Bill Algeo, he throws a lot. He throws 5.73 significant strikes landed per minute compared to Andre Feely's 3.82. And he definitely has. He can absorb more strikes than Andre Feely, absorbing 4.18, while Andre Feely 3.92. I think this one, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value for him, but I'm definitely gonna go with the guy that has the more experience than Andre Feely. This fight right now doesn't make me feel the most comfortable because I actually have not seen Bill Agio that much, but just basing off the statistics I'm seeing, he definitely holds his own. Like you said, they both have 50% takedown accuracy, though Andre Feely is more likely to go for the takedown than Bill Algeo is. So that being said, I think yeah, if the going gets tough, I can see Andre Feely trying to take him down. He does sport a hefty. He only has 3 submissions on his record actually, while Bill Algeo has 6. So not much I can say about Bill Algeo's defense though. His wrestling defense, again, because they're just both pretty much identical. That being said, I'm gonna go with the guy that has the more UFC experience in Andre Feely here. So I'll go down with the betting favorite here.
Yeah, man, I hear you. That's respectable, and I believe me, man. It's a spot where I'm not sure I'm willing to put much individual money on Algeo. But at least just making picks for these fights, I think he's got the current momentum, current streak. He's performing really well lately, but there are a lot of factors with these guys that are even and tough to predict. I think Feely may have a little bit more motivation to come in and get a win. Like you mentioned, he wasn't able to win a fight at all in 2021, partially because of that no contest against Daniel Pineda. So I mean, dude, it's been rough for Feely, and I know he's itching to turn it around. So just that alone might give him the edge over Algeo, but I'm going to take Algeo for this fight. I think he'll be able to continue to bring it like he has previously. And the odds, as you mentioned, the odds are close, and the betting public knows that Algeo will at least be able to make this a competitive fight. So, as we discussed earlier, though, there's been a bunch of shakeups on this card, and we record these very early in the week, so we're just not able to necessarily predict what's going to be the main card lineup exactly come Saturday. I mean, they know who's fighting, but the order could be any which way, and that the UFC doesn't really rush to decide necessarily by time we're recording. But as of right now, the next bout on the main card list here, according to the UFC, is Joe Pyfer and Alan Amadovsky. Jose, this is a middleweight bout with two guys that I didn't really know too much about, and a lot of places kind of just overlook this fight as a whole. It's not even listed as a main card fight on certain websites, depending where you look for your information. These guys are kind of struggling, to say the least. Um, this is one of those fights where you kind of wonder if it's going to stay on the main event. Alan Amadovsky's 0-3 in the UFC, man. His last 2 fights have ended in the first round. He's just kind of been getting his butt kicked. And Joe Pyfer's at least 1-1. And those are from a loss to Dustin Stoltzfus in the Contender Series from 2020. And then he was able to beat Ozzy Diaz in the more recent Contender Series in July earlier this year. with both of his fights also ending early. But I don't think that factors much in a fight with guys that we just don't know anything about. So yeah, Jose, I'm curious to see what you have to say on this one.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like we have a guy that's just coming off a win, and it's his second attempt on the Dana White's Contender Series, and yeah, Alan Adamowski, he's definitely rocking those losses. And the one thing I say about Joseph Pfeiffer is his youth. He's only 25 years old, but dude looks like a jack machine. Like I'm looking at his pick right now, and his nickname is Body Bags. Dude looks like a legit Terminator, and he's got two impressive back to back finishes in the second round. Not really in the UFC, but still Dana White's Contender Series kind of UFC. But yeah, I think that this is definitely they're trying to test Adam Amedovski where he belongs in the UFC because yeah, they're putting him against young new up and comer who's literally this is his first official true UFC fight, and I can't help but notice, but like if he loses this fight, that'll be four straight losses for him, and especially if he's losing to a guy making his official UFC debut, I can see Allen getting cut if he doesn't win this one. He's being what right now? The Yeah, I don't even see his odds right here. They're definitely shaking up this card, but uh, he's Alan Amedowski. He is the betting underdog at plus 300, while Joe Pfeiffer is the betting favorite minus 430. So yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people are just taking off like maybe what I'm seeing by like the eyeball test. When you look at Sir Joseph and Emedowski, it doesn't take long to see his record. Like unanimous decision loss to Christo Jacko. He got lost right away in the first round. His last two matches, once being submitted and once being knocked out. So he's truly lost, and he's collected all three Infinity Stones for how to lose. And he and I just can't help but notice that a young, hungry guy like Joseph Pfeiffer, he's gonna want to make an example out of him. And looking at their grappling right now, Pfeiffer is the wrestler. He has 100% takedown accuracy, whatever that means for how short they've taken his statistics. But right off the bat, he does tend to throw more strikes. As a matter of fact, he has 3.45 significant strikes landed per minute, while Alan Amedowski has 0.55. Just having less than one punch, a significant strike landed per minute, less than one. I don't know how I feel about that, Nick.
Yeah, man, it's really because if you look when his debut against Jocko back in 2019, he got absolutely wrecked, man. The judges decimated him. UFC stats show Ben Cartilage scored the fight 25-30, man. Absolute savagery. Jocko held Amadovsky down for almost 10 minutes in that fight. And in those 15 minutes, unanimous decision win for Jocko. Amadovsky has statistically recorded 6 strikes in that entire fight. So that's mainly why his strikes landed per minute is so low, because that's the only fight of his that's gone to decision. The other two, as I mentioned earlier, were very quick conclusions in the first round. So and not to mention, I just realized too that the most recent loss against Joseph Holmes was coming off of a 2.5 year break. So Amadovsky, he did have a couple of canceled fights in between, but it is fascinating to see him have such a long time in between fights and continue to get dominated within a minute and 4 seconds of that fight starting. So yeah, man. Obviously, the odds are very heavily favored in Pfeiffer's favor, and I agree. I think he's without a doubt going on the parlay, and I don't even think his takedowns are going to be necessary. I think he's just going to knock out Hamadovsky in the first round, like his two previous opponents.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. He's definitely the bigger, more jacked guy. He's 6'2". Amedovsky's 5'10", and Joe Pfeiffer does have just only a 1-inch reach advantage. So yeah, I agree with you. I think even that little slight advantage and that power and youth behind him, I think that in his UFC debut, there's going to be a lot of nerves going into that cage that night on both ends. One guy's like, I can't lose this. I can be cut from the UFC. And one guy is like, I need to cement myself. I need to, it's my UFC debut. Because once you lose your UFC debut, I've seen guys who don't even get a second chance and they get cut right away. So there's the pressure is going to be high, but a lot of people are riding on Joe Pfeiffer's to get this win. And if he's the fighter, maybe he's looking at the odds too, and that can add a different sense of pressure too, knowing that a lot of people are counting on you to win. But that being said, yeah, I'm going to go with the betting favorite as well, Joe Pfeiffer. I do think he's going to end it within 2.5 rounds.
Yeah, sounds good to me, man. I agree. I'm going with Pfeiffer, and I'll do it by KO.
All right, Nick. Now here's where we have the heavyweights. They come to play. This is actually the first fight of the night. It is the opener. It's Tanner Bozier versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Right now, Tanner is the betting favorite at minus 210, while Rodrigo Nascimento is the betting underdog at 162. Nascimento, he's coming off a no contest that got overturned last year in July 2017. And before that, he has a loss to Chris Dawkins in 2020. And other than that, Tanner Bozier, he is coming off a win against OSP. That's a pretty big win. OSP challenged for the interim title against John Jones at one point. And he does have losses over Lair Latifi and Andrei Arlovsky, but I mean, those are pretty big names, I think. They're not the toughest names. Like, they're not tough competitors anymore, but they're big names still. Like, they have established themselves already within the UFC for just how long they've been there, especially Andrei Arlovsky. He was the heavyweight champion at one point, like in 2005. Again, at one point. So big names, but really guys that maybe he could have beat, but again, these are it was a mixture between heavyweight and light heavyweight, so it seems like he really is testing the waters again with heavyweight. He's probably gonna be a smaller heavyweight there, but having a win over OSP, knocking him out in the second round, I think that's pretty huge. Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, it is fascinating to see a guy that's 9-1 looking at being a plus 162 underdog, but I think this is one of those situations where we do have to be careful about looking too far. You mentioned Bozer's losses to Latifi and Arlovsky, which are our big names and necessarily guys that are at the ends of their careers. Latifi, he lost to by split decision. I mean, arguably, the only reason Latifi won that fight was his ability to get the takedowns and control, because Bozer otherwise won that striking match for sure. So I don't know, man. I think, like you mentioned, the KO against OSP is very significant. I mean, Nascimento himself is, that loss against the Tacaus, I guess, is the main thing. Getting knocked out in the first round, man, that concerns me for sure. Granted, that did happen 2 years ago. So I don't know, man. Nascimento does seem to have a pretty significant ground ability. In fact, professionally, he has more submission wins than TKO wins, which I think falls in line with I mean, Tanner Bozer's weaknesses in a lot of cases. Tanner Bozer's got one KO loss, and otherwise he's only lost by decision. But Tanner Bozer's not the kind of guy to want to get taken down. Granted, he's never been submitted in the UFC, so I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but Nascimento does have a couple submission wins under his belt, including one against Dante Mays, which Dante Mays isn't amazing by any means, but it is a pretty tough guy and a pretty big guy to submit for sure. So those things concern me without a doubt, but I do think Tanner Bozer, as I said towards the beginning here, that I don't want to worry too much about his losses to Latifi and Arlovsky. Those were tough, long fights, and I'm not necessarily sure this fight with Nascimento is going the distance. Nascimento's none of his 4 UFC fights, and I know for a fact he's never won a decision in his career, so I don't think he has any plans on going for 15 minutes. It's just a matter of, can Tanner Bozer replicate the success he had against OSP?
Yeah, I definitely hear you, and I just want to point out Tanner Bozer, he actually also fought Cyril Gahn at one point. So he went to unanimous decision, under 3 rounds with Cyril Gahn in December of 2019. So that alone already has made me kind of respect him a little more in this matchup. And I just want to point out, he may have a weight advantage, but this could be wrong. UFC.com right now has Tanner Bozer's his weight as 2,550 pounds. So I think he may have the advantage on that one. Actually, way more than that. Actually, 25,500 pounds. So, holy cow, this is a big boy. But that being said, he himself, he's a finisher for sure because all of his last 3 wins, though, after the Cyril Gahn fight and in between the Lair Latifi and Andre Arlovski, have not gone beyond the second round, and he's won via KO and TKOs. So, and like you said, Nascimento too. He's a finisher himself. I agree. This fight's not going to go to the end of 3 rounds. And Nascimento getting knocked down that first round is concerning for me. And but the biggest thing I'm riding with is Bozer's experience overall: 20 wins and 8 losses. His losses equal the amount of wins that Nascimento has, and even though he has that one loss too by getting knocked out, that's shown. That's a blueprint right there, showing like, yo, this guy, he's vulnerable. His chin can be, has been tested, and we've seen that it can fall off in the first round. And Tanner, he himself has proven that he can make people fall asleep in the first round. So that being said, I'm gonna have to go with the UFC vet in Tanner Bozer, the betting favorite.
For sure, man. I totally agree. I think I'm willing to go with Bowser, and he'll get the W. I'm not necessarily going to give a win method, but it probably will be under 3 rounds, it seems like.
So there you have it, both Nick and I for the betting favorite, Tanner Bozer.
So, Jose, let's get into who you think our lock of the week and underdog of the week should be. I think we had both discussed Neo Kwani, man, minus 106. That seems like a juicy underdog. I think that might have to be my underdog of the week. Also, Bill Algio, I know you had Feely. If you need to take a second to scroll over to FanDuel, take a minute, man. You're good. I'm just kind of looking at our bets here for the week. We obviously discussed earlier, at least I mentioned, that I'm not really looking to mess around with the main event. The more we discussed it, man, the more I liked Song in the underdog side of things. So I guess if I'm going to bet any direction in that, it'll be for the underdog. But definitely.
Nick, I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you on that. I'm switching my I'm definitely going for Yadong Song. Looking at it, this guy's youth. This is gonna be a tough challenge, but if he loses, hey man, he was the underdog.
Right.
But I think he can get this win, and I think if there's any underdog, I think he should be our dog.
Interesting.
He should be our dog of the week.
Yeah, that's a solid point, man. You know what? I think I'm willing to mix it up this week. If you want to make Song your underdog, I'm going to stick with Algio then because you pick Feely. So then I'll go with Algio because I think he's going to get it done. And then we've got 2 underdogs for the fans.
Yeah. We got Chidi and Yadong Song. Chidi, I can see the Chidi one kind of still switching because I don't know. I feel like as the week goes on, maybe more people will look into Chidi a little more because I was
Yeah,
speaking highly on him for a while, and I think I do think he's going to make some big waves in this division.
for sure. And I think even earlier in this show, you had to refresh it to even get like the most updated odds. So that just goes to show I think this is going to be moving pretty quick, back and forth, at least for that. In terms of our lock of the week, it seems like we're going to have to go with Tanner Bozer, man. We didn't really agree on, I guess we could go with Neo Kwani as well, given that I think we agreed on him. It seems to be between Bozer and Neo Kwani for our lock of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down with either or. Tanner Boozer is probably the heaviest favorite here, so at minus 200. So having Chidi as a lock for sure, because that's tighter. I think you know, I think I may have to go with that. I think I'm gonna go with Chidi because I don't know if I'm gonna change my mind about Chidi.
I like it. I like it. And it won't matter what the line ends at because he's not going to be the heaviest favorite regardless. So we'll go with the lock of the week then for both of us as Cheating Ioquani. And as for the parlays, we're going to have Joe Pfeiffer plus Cheating Ioquani plus Tanner Bozer. That three leg parlay is going to be plus 259. And from there, it kind of depends if you're a fan of the underdog picks of mine and Jose's. I have Algio winning that fight, so if you agree, that's plus 647. Otherwise, adding Feely instead is plus 519. If you want to avoid that fight entirely and maybe go with Jose's underdog of the week, Song, you could get plus 848 on that 8 leg parlay. That's something that I would heavily look at, just throwing a couple bucks at, because I think it's got some good chances of happening. But nonetheless, you're going to want to have Pfeiffer in your parlays, and you're going to want to have Neo Kwani in your parlays this week, because those are definitely the locks. And from there, it kind of depends who you favor. But you can bet that I'm going to be putting Song myself in at least one of the bigger parlays to get me, some 850 plus returns on our bets. And I know Jose had a couple of extra picks. I think at least one extra pick he wanted to make on the prelims. So before we let Jose make his pick on the prelims, don't forget, guys, to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Moneyline MMA. Leave a comment down below letting us know who you guys are putting your wagers on, what parlays you're lining up, and if you agree with Jose or I on that Feely versus Algio fight. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We post our our weekly picks there. A note that we had from last week is that we destroyed our picks, Jose, man. We absolutely swept the table, and I got some big returns on the parlay and the underdogs from last week, as well as the lock. So we're going to continue hitting those home runs, and as we mentioned, I mean, this is recorded earlier in the week, so stuff can change. I mean, last week was a crazy fiasco that we could probably spend a whole podcast discussing. But that being said, those picks that we have, and Jose is welcome to add what he wants, but the picks that are final are always put on Twitter that Saturday, no matter how much the card changes up. Our picks were still up there in terms of Diaz versus Ferguson instead of Diaz versus Kamzat. So definitely follow us on Twitter, and I'll let Jose finish off with his last picks.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, for the last fight, just because how the cards tend to move around a bit, and we want to make sure like I want to always keep my eye out to see some fights. There's been in the past where there's certain fights on the prelim that I feel like may get moved to the main card, and it does. And it's like, I almost wish I would have talked about it. So this is one of those fights too. I mean, we have two girls in the top 10 in the women's bantamweight division of Aspen Ladd, who's ranked number 7, against Sarah McMahon, who's ranked number 8. This is a classic almost wrestler versus wrestler. You have Aspen Ladd. She is right now, FanDuel has her as the betting favorite at minus 128, while Sarah McMahon is the betting underdog at plus 100. This is really just, you have a young star who's just, she's haven't had the best of her luck. She has 3 losses right now in her career. When Aspen Ladd was coming into the UFC, there was a lot of praise on her, but she lost to Jermaine Duran. I mean, that was a weird fight, how it ended in the first round. But she did lose by unanimous decision in her last 2 fights, while Sarah McMahon has won her last one. So that being said, Sarah McMahon, I mean, if for those of you who don't remember, she did fight Ronda Rousey, challenger for the title way back in the day, back at UFC 172-14. This is really just a vet versus a young up and rising star who's just really trying to prove that they do belong in the UFC. So I wouldn't call Aspen Ladd rising star anymore. But that being said, I'm gonna go with Aspen Ladd, the betting favorite. Sarah McMahon, she has strong wrestling, but I personally don't think that she's gonna pull this one off. So just to keep a long story short, I'm definitely gonna ride with Aspen Ladd, the betting favorite, mostly because her output, it compared to McMahon's got the strong wrestling, But Aspen Ladd does tend to throw more punches landed per minute at 3.78. She is precise and she can finish people. So I'm definitely just going with the more youthful one here. If she can avoid getting taken down, and as long as even if she gets taken down, as long as she just doesn't get the ground and pound or her back submitted, I'm not too worried about Sarah McMahon doing that to her. So again, I'm gonna go with the betting favorite Aspen Ladd for that one.